1998 when it happened on the Long Island Expressway.
Test, test. Brian, it's a test for you, media.
Yeah, I like that. There's no one size fits all strategy encompassing practices, procedures for project.
So we'll go ahead, hey guys, we'll go ahead and get the July 12th TAC meeting, we'll call it to order. And here's this, oh, it's on, can you hear me? Come on. So it appears as though we do not have a quorum today. So just, do you want us to give you our names for the record? Okay, I'm Deborah Bolduc.
Melanie Romagnoli.
Kurt Scheibel.
Cynthia Spidel.
So in previous meetings, we would take a vote by consensus. So it looks like we'll do that for some of the items. I don't know if we'll do them for all the items, but we'll do it for some of the items. So I don't see anyone here to provide public comment. So we'll move on to approval of the meeting minutes from May 10th. And I did
you want
have one correction to that. Venkat was at the meeting. He came in a little bit late. He was sitting in the audience though. So maybe we can add his name to the minutes. Okay, could I have, are there any corrections, additions to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended to make sure that VinCat's attendance is duly noted.
A second.
Well, do you
consensus.
want to defer the minutes to the next meeting then, and instead of doing a consensus?
If I may, I'd like to have corrections so we can have a corrected set for the next meeting. And then
Okay.
we'll approve the meeting minutes from today
And from May
as well
10th.
as the May 10th meeting minutes, please.
Okay. All right. All right. Then we're on to the report on MPO board actions. So do you have
Thank you.
something that you wanted to share?
Gladly. So included in your meeting packet is a revised set or a revised interlocal agreement, and it's the agreement between the MPO and the County of Pasco. The reason being is that while the MPO is hosted or housed within the county, we are considered independent of the county decision-making structure. And it was during our federal review, which happens every 4 years, that we were asked to revise this agreement and clarify a few points to further establish that the MPO is an independent decision-making body from the county. So we did go ahead and have this vetted through the attorney's office to make sure that it met legal sufficiency, and it's also been cleared with county personnel. There is a little bit longer write-up in your packet, and then, of course, the document is included in your packet as well. I'd be happy to entertain any questions. Question is, does this include this is separate from the one that you and I are working on for transit, correct? That is correct. This is only between the MPO and then the county board of commissioners, or the board of county commissioners.
So it's listed here as an action item. So what would your preference be in order?
In order that I may share the thoughts of this body with the MPO board, who will ultimately be the final decision maker on this, as well as then the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners, I would like to hear if there are any objections to this. I could report back that although there was not a quorum, there were no objections, or there were concerns, or there were objections, something to that effect, since we won't be able to take a vote on it.
The only question I got is it talks about in section 2, the scope of services, as transit is a county part of that, the transit system, shouldn't there be a section in there on what we were required to give you, like for TIP and the UPWP and things like that, or no?
So FHWA and FTA during their quadrennial review was looking at just the Board of County Commissioners because we are on the payroll of the BOCC. And therein lies, I think, the large concern that our federal partners had.
I was just curious I think it needs to go into our MPO transit requirement that's where it needs to go, I think. I think you agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to ask the other members a question. So if you guys, I don't know if you saw like later on in the agenda, there is a report from the Office of Inspector General about like some training and accounting and that kind of thing. That doesn't need to go or be reflected in this interlocal agreement at all, does it?
Is it a separate, are they both separate actions? The action plan as a result of the audit and the interlocal agreement, are they independent of each other?
They are for the purposes of how we're handling them, independent of each other. The action, this item, which is the interlocal agreement, is influenced by the outcome of the Office of Inspector General's findings and report, but it is largely driven by the federal review of the MPO, which was again a separate action, a third item, if you will. But yes, the Office of Inspector General did find that there were some relationships that were a little too close and that they need to be defined. It was the Federal Highway Administration who said, you must express that you are clearly independent of the decision-making within the county. And it went a step further and even said that the MPO is not to show favoritism to the host agency. So it is influenced by it, but it's not dependent upon that OIG report.
And so there's no conflict between the two, between the interlocal and the.
Conflict.
I was just wondering more because it was clear to me from reading the interlocal that it's your own independent thing, but in the recommendations it had stuff like providing training, and so I didn't know if you needed to make sure that this reflected that, like that the county staff would be providing adequate training for munis or whatever other functions there might be to make sure that you guys can do your billings and be compliant next time they audit.
And
So
actually,
you have that support.
the training is to be from the MPO to county staff. The purpose
And who
of it
pays
being,
for that then?
pardon me?
Who's paying for that?
The county will, or the MPO will be paying for training that we provide to the staff of the county. When it comes to the MPO asking the county to do work on behalf of the MPO and then charging the MPO for that work, there were some areas where it wasn't clear what work was being done or documentation wasn't very clear. As a result, part of our tasks under the audit, which we'll be talking about in a bit, is that we are to develop a billing process so that we can properly document any of those what are called less charges, but charges from county departments to the MPO, that we can clearly document those when we're submitting that paperwork to Florida DOT. And so to make sure that it was handled properly, we're required to conduct training with county staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It just brought back flashbacks of
Less charging? Yeah.
and the indirect costing and indirect
Yeah.
charges. And
It all comes back around.
yes,
So you need to have an action taken by the TAC. Now, do you want us to vote that we support the approval of this item by the MPO board and just do it by a roll call? Or do you want us to do a vote and a motion and then by consensus?
Well, given that we don't have a quorum, any vote we would take would be largely symbolic, for lack of a better way of explaining it.
Okay.
I'd be happy though if we just did maybe aye or no or nay, and I could report to the board that there was one no. Although we didn't have a quorum, there was a
There was a
unanimous support
consensus.
for it, or one vote against it, or however that may be.
And I can just,
just a real quick comment too. Noticing that Scott asked to record us using the handheld. I think I used that back in the day too. The clerking and the minutes, is that only to extend to the MPO board or to the advisory committees as well?
Right now, it is only to the MPO board, but you are reading my mind. I would like to ask them if they would assist us with the committees. That's a conversation I'd like to bring up with them.
It's just going to cost you a little bit, just
It will.
Little bit.
But it is, I think we all have agreed in our earlier parts of our career that it's probably one of the least desirable jobs in any organization. And I took a turn last go around with meeting minutes.
Just follow Roger's rules of order. Roger's rules of order
Okay.
for writing
Are there
minutes.
any more comments or questions regarding this item? So then,
I think generally,
if everyone is in agreement that that the MPO governing board approve the item, then acknowledge by saying aye.
Aye.
hi.
Thank
Opposed,
you.
same sign. Right, the next item on the agenda is the Transportation System Management and Operations Letter of Support.
For this item, I want to open up by saying thank you to the Metro Plan Orlando MPO, who's very generously donating one of their staff members, a Mr. Eric Hill, to organize along the I-4 corridor all of the MPOs in an effort to have a regional transportation system and management operations system in place. This is something that Metro Plan Orlando has been actively doing within their 3 county boundaries, and thought that as part of a regional partnership, they would like to extend that out from Daytona Beach roughly all the way over to Tampa Bay. Pasco County is within that region. They've asked for us to support them in their efforts to have a regional TSM&O process. It's on a planning level basis, and we have prepared a letter of support. They had originally requested an MOU, but after looking at it through legal counsel, they advised against that and suggested a letter of support. The letter of support has been reviewed by legal counsel just to make sure that we do not step outside any areas that legal counsel would feel uncomfortable with. Because other MPOs within the corridor are doing MOUs, I felt the letter would have added strength to it if it contained a full vote of support from our board. Therefore, if it's going to be an action item for the board, I want you to see it as well.
So I was curious about this because I guess I really wasn't clear on what exactly they would be doing. If it is a coordination of like what we're doing in traffic operations for traffic management and our traffic operations center, if it is looking at enhancing the network, are you looking at the interstate system? Are you looking at what exactly will they look at as part of this planning effort? So I wasn't sure if it's limited or if it's what?
So the various MPOs are in various stages of TSM&O implementation. And so it will be largely in the beginnings, educational in nature, so that everybody can be brought up to a common level, starting, of course, with I-4. As that develops, then I can see the TSM&O expanding out to other major facilities that move traffic regionally. This will be something that I presume will evolve over time. And I can see the nature and role of this group changing as we accomplish certain objectives and we look to the future. What does that future look like? Where do we go with it from here? And I can easily see that in about 2 to 3 years, we could be coming back to you with something resembling a scope of work that would be revised from what we're looking at today.
So would you be sitting on this group? Would you have somebody from the MPO that was a participant on this?
Someone from the MPO, I may be initially involved, but I could see that being something where a team member would be the primary member, and perhaps I would serve as an alternate.
So it'd be interesting to get like periodic updates and reports. I don't know if Venkat, he's not here today, but if he had a chance to take a look at this as well, because he's got a a lot of experience and a really strong background in this. So having him on board would be beneficial.
And I would be more than happy to make sure that he is invited as a member of the group.
Okay, good.
I think interregional coordination is obviously extremely important. My question is any funding required for this action?
No funding is required from the MPO. But that is one of the very generous things from Metro Plan Orlando is that they are paying for the salary of Mr. Eric Hill entirely out of their funding for a regional effort. And as an added note, to give this a bit of context, some of the larger MPOs in the state, such as the Broward MPO, are funding and leading statewide efforts. So Broward is leading a statewide freight planning committee of the MPOs, and they are footing the bill for it entirely. Metro Plan Orlando wanted to focus on TSM&O, so they're leading that. And I anticipate we'll see a little bit more of this going forward in the future, where the larger MPOs will be taking, their passion area and then trying to expand it statewide. Because when you have that larger voice as a statewide or a large regional group, it gives you more standing in terms of promoting legislation, working with Florida DOT across multiple districts when you speak in a unified voice to then help influence or change policy at a statewide level.
Debbie, right now I've been kind of the liaison since we've been short-staffed working with Eric Hill trying to get it Tismo and Pasco off the ground. VinCat has been working with the grant for the LAP TAP and the CAV with FDOT, which we got $500,000 in our TIP. So kudos to VinCat. That tied in the TSM&O. So VinCat is aware. He can be a representative, so he is working with us on it because he does work with FDOT a lot with the traffic timing and signals. It's been fairly new. He did help me initially because I was so new to the TSM&O process to do the assessment that Eric Hill was wanting me to do. So yeah, we've been working initially pretty closely. So he is pretty looped in on that. But yeah, I don't know moving forward if I will stay on the TSM&O as the liaison, but since we were short-staffed, I've kind of been stepping in. Metro Plan has a regional meeting about once every other month to coordinate with all the MPOs. And they're using the stick funding to kind of fund it. They're getting the money and then they kind of use their time and efforts to provide the services. So as Carl said, it's very preliminary. It's educate and engage kind of initiative right now.
Oh, good.
So
Well,
is
thanks for that.
TBRPC and the One Bay Vision being incorporated with this also?
I mean T-BARTA,
TBRPC, the regional plan,
RPC.
along with TBARTA and all the way up to Orlando. Do you know if they are going to be involved in it?
I do not know, but they would certainly be a likely partner for very obvious reasons because of their regional nature. I'd be happy to ask about having them involved in this.
They've done some massive regional studies on congestion management and everything else. So that's why I was wondering. And as part of that big vision, I don't know where we're at with that anyway, but I just remember the map being hammered in my head. So. Right.
Any other questions or comments? So if you can acknowledge by saying aye.
Aye.
To approve the draft letter of support for the TSM&O.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, next up is the OIG actionable plan.
Thank you. So last year, the Florida DOT Office of Inspector General paid a visit to Pasco County. They are looking at 2 MPOs per year. Their general plan has been to work or to look at a larger MPO and then a smaller MPO. When they began looking at the Pasco County MPO, they found a couple of things. One of them being that the billings were not accurate. They had many errors in them. They were late. They also found that some of the documentation was lacking. So it's a pretty rough report. Now, I won't sugarcoat it, But one of the things we are charged with is coming up with an action plan on how we're going to fix this. Now, I want to say a great thank you to Lori of our staff, who is our accountant. She has cleaned up the books. We are required to submit a billing within 90 days of the end of the period for which we're submitting the bill to Florida DOT. She, in the last billing, had the billing submitted, reviewed without errors, and a reimbursement check to the county inside 90 days. She'd done that also the quarter before. We have had 3 clean billings. Because of this report and then the late nature of the bills, Pasco County MPO has been considered high risk by Florida DOT. One of the other factors adding to the high risk factor is when you get a new executive director. So I am part of your problem at the moment. As I have more time on board, that will lower the risk. The billing side of it, Lori will have that taken down to low risk in no time. She's well on her way. I'm very proud of the work that she's done. And I do hope if you see her, you will thank her. So as part of our actionable plan, we have to outline item by item, how are we going to address the comments that are in the action plan? Now, there's not a specific format of how you do this. So I chose to do this in a form of a letter, thinking it would be the easiest way to transmit it, copying out sections from the report, and then in red, providing our action plan or how we will commit to rectifying the problems. So that is what you have before you. It is in our federal highway quadrennial review that we have to have an actionable plan submitted, and I believe it's by July 31st. We just got the report in final form about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, so there's not a real big time frame on that. Prior to this, I had been working with the district staff to make sure that everything we were proposing was comfortable with them, because we don't want to make a move and suggest something to the central office of Florida DOT without first securing the support of our partners and friends at District 7. This goes into the issue that was raised earlier about the training. And we are to train those departments that charge the MPO for their services on how to properly bill us. And it's basically, when did you do the work? What was the work? How many hours? And what's your hourly rate? And we'll have to have it documented in a manner that's easy for someone to understand. So this action plan that is before you, we would like to take that in front of the board on August 12th and have their buy-in and support for it. So I'd like to entertain any questions you have.
I'm still confused on who's training whom on Munis.
So on the Munis, it is not the training on Munis. First issue is that the county would need to give Lori and anyone else who does accounting work complete access to Munis, so that, for example, if you were to bill us, we would be able to then pull up your hourly rate and insert that into billing, also the hours that are in there. So for the Munis, that would require, if we had a new employee, that the county give training to a new MPO employee on how to navigate and work through Munis. Any other training that's referenced in here is the MPO training county staff on how to properly bill the MPO so that we can reimburse the county. So yeah, the training does go 2 ways. And when you reference the Munis, yes, that's the other direction.
So with the action plan, and you did, it was well done, I gotta say. I mean, it was well.
Thank you. I was
Now,
my
when things
first
go
guess at it.
south, you have to put out a lot of effort to rewrite the, correct the ship. So I thought that was well done, but will there be a subsequent follow-up relative to the action plan by them, or is there a time period that they will be monitoring the MPO? So I guess I'm just curious about closure.
Okay.
Once you've done these
on the
things.
follow-up, let me start with the monitoring first, because I think that's easiest. And the monitoring is continuous and is occurring now. We are being all of our billings are going through a high level of scrutiny every time they are submitted. And that will continue as long as we continue in this high-risk categorization. And again, because of my being relatively new here, that contributes to that high-risk level. That monitoring and high risk continue on until we fade or gradually decline into a lower risk category, in which the monitoring will then also presumably go down to a lower level. Our billings, while we have to have the same level of documentation, we don't have to send all of that documentation to Florida DOT. We must maintain it in our offices at all times so that if they came in and said, I want to see this from a billing 2 billings back, we have to be able to pull it up and hand over. Effectively, be ready for an audit at all times. In terms of a response, I am under the impression, watching these happen with other MPOs in my previous life as the executive director of Florida MPOAC, that at some point, all the issues will be considered resolved, and there will be a formal letter saying, we consider you to have resolved these issues. There will be a very nice dinner for the team when that letter comes in. But that I expect to be at the earliest a year away, if not longer. This is a long road, but I know this is a team that can make it happen. I'm not worried about it.
I'm with Debbie. I thought it was very well written, and I think that, you really took it on, the role of the MPO to kind of fix it. But I would just want to make sure that the county is recognizing and acknowledging their role in it too, because all the training in the world does not necessarily mean that they're going to less charge correctly to you. So I would just want, and that's, I guess, ties back into my original question about the interlocal agreement. I would just want to make sure that there are fallbacks and safety measures in place to hold the county accountable for their part of the deal in your success, because it truly is a partnership. So
it is a partnership, and going back to the interlocal agreement, I like to describe the nature of the relationship of the MPO to the county as, I'm much like that adult college-age student that still lives at home with the parents. I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions and getting myself into a lot of trouble, but because I'm under your roof, I am a liability to you. So yes, with this and the training for the billings, if we don't have proper documentation, we just simply cannot pay the bill from the county. And I think that by itself will be the big enough stick, or getting paid being the carrot, to resolve that.
yeah, that's fair enough.
And I'm going to stand very firm on that because I have to. Otherwise, I'm going to have another one of these. And my experience in watching this happen in other MPOs where they've had a rough audit report, the MPO executive director did not survive it. I like to work. I want to stick around.
Good. Thank you.
Just to let you know, Carl, I had the same thing happen to me within about the same time period as you've been here, that I've been here. It does get better after a while.
You're still here. I like that.
I'm still here. I'm with you with the, you walked into something and now you're doing the right steps to move forward to make sure you're following what needs to be done.
Thank you.
And we definitely don't want to jeopardize those federal and state.
Oh, gosh, no.
No.
A lot of important work to do.
Any other comments or questions for Carl? So by consensus, can you indicate if you support the draft MPO action plan addressing the OIG report?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Next up is the monthly meeting scheduled. So do we want to wait till the next meeting and approve? Oh, well, we can't because this involves the MPO board too. I was going to suggest that for the TAC meetings, I don't know, delay that till next time.
So
I think that
What do you want us to do?
if we go ahead and do the consensus for every other month, like as presented, but then do an at-will if we need to convene for other actions that may take place.
My question is, which schedule are you referring to? Because there's two of them in the packet.
The
One-
proposed.
Proposed,
Second
which is the second one.
Yeah.
I like the second one because it gives a little more time in between.
But if there comes up an action where we have to approve prior to MPO, then we have that ability to meet.
The one thing I need to say is we need to hold the CAC and the TAC in the same month as we have the MPO pursuant to your need to get the, all the changes that happen in the CAC and the TAC. But I'm seeing, the 24th to the 10th, that's what, 2 weeks?
Mhm.
If I did go ahead.
Yeah. So at an earlier meeting, actually, I believe it was the May meeting, there was a reference made to the block of time between your meeting and then the board meeting, and that it was a rather large block of time. A lot of things
And
can
sometimes
change
it
in
was
that.
after,
Pardon me?
and it was after.
Yes, yes. And so there's a large block of time in there, and a lot of things can change in that 1 month period. So as we looked at this, we wanted to allow enough time between your meeting and the board meeting so that if you directed a change, it could be reflected in a meeting packet, that meeting packet prepared, and then produced and out to the board 1 week before their meeting. So it effectively gives us 1 week to take changes from this body and incorporate into the meeting packet. We do try to keep everything within a 30-day period from start of CAC to board. So there was a request to have it in the same month. I took a more liberal interpretation, said, well, a 1 month time frame, not necessarily a calendar month proper, please. The other thing is with the proposed schedule, we're looking at about every other month. We didn't want to overburden you or ourselves, for that matter, with meetings and meeting preparation. We did try to purposely avoid the December meeting because we get into holidays and it gets rather busy. I know we all have lives outside of work. We didn't want to infringe upon that. The other thing is, by having you closer to a meeting, if we would have a change to the TIP or something that would come about, or a funding opportunity with maybe a new transportation bill, this would give us a better opportunity to engage you in discussions.
I will say, though, I'm kind of looking at the time between there, and there's still a significant time between January 17th with the CAC and February 10th. I mean, we're talking 1, 2, 3 weeks. I would consider that excessive. And then looking at some of the other times on there, like March 21st for the CAC, and April 14th, again, that seems excessive.
You mean there's too much time?
Yeah, too much time. I'm
But
thinking,
it's a week between CAC and TAC, and then another week between
Yeah.
TAC and MPO board.
well, normally, I mean, in the
Gotta
past, we
publish
had the
it
CAC
before.
on a Thursday,
CAC
and
and
the
MPO.
CAC on a Monday, and the MPO, or Wednesday, Monday, Thursday. That's what it used to be, but I'm just concerned that it's gonna, the information between the CAC and the MPO is gonna get a little stale. And
I don't think that it will. I think it gives you plenty of time to make sure that your agendas are updated and published,
well,
a week before, so that you have plenty of public comment if anybody else wants to know what's going on. And like you said earlier, you're able to get the changes in that week between our meeting and the MPO.
I will disagree completely with that. As a person that attends, one of the people that attend all 3 of those meetings and give reports at all 3 of those meetings,
Oh,
I've seen the information go stale. And I've
yes.
seen it been where the CAC gets out of it a little bit, and they
Okay.
come in and they're talking about things that have, I
Excuse
don't know,
me.
resolved or so forth.
Resolved.
I'm just being
Oh,
honest with
that's
you.
a
I
good
think
point.
it
That's a good
is a
point.
long time between the thing. And I know you're trying your best with what you got, but that is my one big concern, is between the CAC and the MPO, because I think that's the relationship that I think is the most, I mean, we have our little thing here, but the CAC and the MPO board, there should be a lot closer. I don't know.
Are you saying the TAC should come before the CAC?
No, I'm just saying it needs to be,
Tighter.
the 3 meetings are a little bit tighter than the 3 weeks.
Like a 2
But
week span.
it goes back to what you're saying. You still, if there's an issue that comes up and we have to fix it and so forth, I don't know what that balance is, but I do think 3 weeks between the first and the last is a touch long. And that's not even counting the BCC meetings you got to work around. And all the other
And
meetings you got to work around.
And
So
where does BPAC fall in
I think they're a different type of organization
They every other
out of
month,
this,
yeah, they're
out of
not
the
in this mix.
FTA, FHWS, whatever it's called.
Well, and not all of their items then flow up to the board. You know, the agenda for the CAC, the TAC, and the board are, we're trying to have them as similar, if not identical, going through so that the vetting done by you is what the board sees, so that when it reaches the board, it's been vetted and cleaned by the advisory committees. The BPAC is focused on a narrow area, and so it doesn't flow into this process always.
Is the CAC invited to come to a TAC or an MPO board meeting if they had an issue that went stale?
Hmm?
Because,
More
I mean,
than,
you know,
yes.
with all due respect to you, I don't envy you having to go to all those meetings, trust me. But, you know, as someone who's managed projects, then I feel like this is a tight schedule as it is. And with the agenda deadlines and having to publish stuff and give public adequate notice, maybe if something is going stale, they could come then to the meeting and bring it up.
Again, I just think it's just too, and like I said, it's just, I think it's too big, too long between it. I'm just one of the board, but I think it's too long. And this is probably something you probably need to bring to CAC and get their opinion on it.
No, that's a good idea.
The people I've talked to on the CAC, they're kind of, some of them have mentioned it, but only one or two. In fact, I don't think one of them's even on the board anymore because of the, you don't understand the turnover that happens on there. But that's just my
That's it.
concern.
That's a
Have
good
they
idea.
seen it? Did the CAC vote on this yet?
So the CAC was to meet last week when we had a threat of a circular
Oh,
vortex.
It was
I don't
the
want,
day of the-
I don't want to use the H word in your
You
company.
mean the rainstorm that was not even as worse as what we had yesterday?
Yes,
So you didn't meet last week to get their, so
so they are
may-
meeting on Wednesday,
Okay.
like this Wednesday.
2 days, yes.
So maybe we should hold off
Yeah,
until,
yeah, till next meeting. So we
I
can-
will ask, I would like to move forward only because if we miss the August meeting with the MPO board, we're looking at the October meeting and trying
we
to
just
put
say
on
subject to
calendars a January
CAC?
meeting. I would like to lock up the schedules for our elected officials
Sure.
for next year as early as possible. I'm more than happy to share the concerns that have been raised by the board here, or by the committee here with the board, and
Why don't-
share it as well with the CAC on Wednesdays so that they're aware.
I think that's.
but
the
that's fine
important
for you
thing.
to do the MPO board dates. We
Okay.
could just hold off on any approval of the TAC meeting dates until we hear back from the CAC.
That's a good
But you could still start with, you could still get the MPO board approval for their
Okay.
dates.
Yeah, we can take it to the board and share with them that the staff proposal for CAC and TAC are these dates, but that we have to clear it with CAC and TAC.
Right.
Okay,
So that'd be fine. And then they can lock down their days. And then
okay.
we can back up from there.
There you go. I like that.
We'll
Yeah,
transmit it to them that way.
Debbie, the Thursdays didn't change for the MPO, and we would have to change the bylaws for the TAC and the CAC. So that's why we're trying to make sure that this is the change you would like, because then it has to go through the RLS process for us to change the actual date and time of the CAC and the TAC.
Well, is it going to be a problem? Our next meeting is October, right? Next meeting is October. We're not meeting.
Yeah, we will not meet again. No, we will, our next committee meetings will be September.
Are we in September, October?
September, yeah.
The August meeting, there's an MPO on August 12th, and then our next one is not until
October
September,
11th.
October 11th, yeah.
October 11th.
We would get it approved at the board, and then September you would approve at the committees.
So
And that October 11th one, is coincides with the county holiday, right?
Oh, it's a staff
Staff
development
development
day.
day.
Is it
Staff
staff
development
development
day. Is that October 11th?
That's October 11th. Just to give you a heads up.
Thank you for the heads up. Much appreciated.
Columbus Day.
October 14th, I'm sorry.
It should be October 14th.
It's 14th.
Just to make sure I understand, we're just going to wait and see what the CAF wants to do.
Well,
Well,
I
if
would
they're-
say that I would support this contingent upon the CAC? Or,
Well, if I'm hearing Kirk correctly, he wants it tightened up. I mean, previously we used to do like you said, Wednesday would be CAC,
Look at the
Monday would be
November
TAC,
dates.
and then the following Thursday. So it was pretty tight. And so he said information doesn't go stale, you know, so it worked well. I don't know if we want to have that much time between everything.
I mean, on an agenda like today, it might not be that bad, but when you're going through your TIP program and you're going through I would just imagine it would be hard to make all those, it's so voluminous.
Do you change, I mean, previously, when the meetings were held Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, did you make a lot of changes in the agenda? Oh, Ms. Tania, did you make a lot of changes in the agenda packet? When we used to meet, when the CAC met on Wednesday, TAC met on Monday, and MPO met on Thursday? I didn't think that you did.
If we had to, we did. If you gave feedback in the CAC, and then we had to make changes in the TAC, and Manny and John would make changes and bring it to the
But it wouldn't be
board.
the whole packet, it'd be like a page or
Yeah, it would be a tweak
like
to
a
the agenda
total
memo.
redo of the packet.
So they
I
would
mean,
be,
I wouldn't see that.
they would be
But-
publishing the NPO.
We would be
agenda before
publishing the board agenda, right?
approvals.
Right. And then we would be publishing your comments to the board, right? Remember, we're taking the tax information that you provide, and the CAC is bringing their report, and BPAC's bringing their report, but your information as the technical, we're providing that to the board because you guys don't provide a report, so we're bringing that to the board. So that's what that would be tweaked in the packet per, under the old, system. That's what we would, Manny and John would provide in there. They would go in and they would make that known with your comments. Well, you have some time to think about it.
So do you want us to take some kind of action on this now in terms of
We don't have a quorum anyway, so.
yeah.
Well, correct, you don't have a quorum. It sounds like there's interest in hearing feedback from the CAC committee. And I'm comfortable with taking this proposed schedule to the board and showing them a hypothetical for CAC and TAC, but locking in the board dates. And then at our next meeting, we could lock in your dates, as well as asking the CAC about locking in their dates.
I think
I
that's
agree with
fair.
that. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We agree
Okay.
with that. Okay.
That's what we'll take to the board.
Just to remind you also, November 10th is the day before Veterans Day too. Yeah, the 11th is Veterans Day.
So in the private sector, we don't get all these days off. I'm just telling y'all.
Yep.
But the Board of County
They have
Commissioners
things that
matter.
don't affect me.
They will adjust these dates. So these probably will change.
Well, yeah.
They'll change.
Well, no, he has to do it because he's looking for the MPOs because of all the meetings and things.
The 8th is
Also,
the,
that November 10th date is dictated by the bylaws. We'll have to ask them to agree to do something outside of their bylaws for a meeting date. I believe that's, we have to select that date and give it to them. But yes, you're right.
I had to look it up because I can remember it's that week. It's a funky one.
are you talking about 22, Kurt?
So we'll see this back again in October.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to go back. So we finished the action items, and I'm going to go back to the report on the MPO board actions from June 10th, because did you want to brief us on anything that was discussed at the June 10th MPO meeting or not? Was there anything in that meeting that stands
So
out?
probably the largest item that was on there was that there was a discussion about attendance at the MPO board meetings by all the members. It was an interesting discussion. We reached a resolution, and the staff will then be recording. Thank you. Who's attended and reporting out to the full board on an annual basis. That was the highlighted item. The rest of the agenda followed what you had seen through your May 10th meeting.
Yeah, they've had that discussion before. This isn't a new one. It just comes back every year.
Groundhog
Okay.
Day.
Yeah, it is Groundhog Day. All right. Well, thanks, Carl. And then the next up, we have status reports, presentations, and updates. The project prioritization methodology presentation. So do you have a PowerPoint for us?
Yes, so today there's a presentation that Mr. Scott Ferry, who is a principal planner with us, will be giving to you. I want to commend Scott for a great deal of work that went into a review nationally of project prioritization practices, something that we as an MPO have not been terribly strong on. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to Scott because he's the one who put all the legwork into this, and so he is our resident expert.
Thank you, Carl, and good afternoon. The MPO staff recognizes that our current prioritization process lacks a quantifiable methodology of ranking projects in a manner to determine the best and highest use of the limited transportation funds available to the region. To create a process or methodology, the team looked at practices used across the nation to learn about various approaches used by MPOs that have worked well and that could be implemented in Pasco County. So what I'm going to do right now is just take a few minutes and share with you some of the basic findings from that research. During our research, the staff learned that the most referenced federal requirement as a component of other organizations' project prioritization processes was MAP 21 legislation, which requires the development and implementation of performance measures. And that was cited multiple times as creating a need for a systemized method of project prioritization. The staff also learned that almost every prioritization method reviewed utilizes a mix of both qualitative and quantitative practices. Common practices involve evaluating a project and assigning a score across different sets of performance measures, which typically fall into different goal categories, such as mobility, safety, or sustainability. We also learned that it's uncommon that projects are budgeted and prioritized based on where they rank per the initial phase of the prioritization process alone. Usually, the scoring process serves to reduce the number of candidate projects, and then a designated set of stakeholders qualitatively evaluates each project to select their individual rankings. Data accessibility and usability and technical expertise were cited as two common challenges and constraints in performing project prioritization. Staff also learned, and it was very clear throughout all of our research, there is no one-size-fits-all strategy encompassing the practices, procedures, and efforts for developing a project prioritization process. And in that same vein, no single approach is best. As agency goals and operating conditions vary, agencies pursue prioritization processes that are flexible and appropriate to those goals and conditions. Some of the common project prioritization criteria that we came across in our research include safety and security, project readiness, equity, travel time, congestion reduction and reliability, economic development, livability, infrastructure condition and resiliency, and intermodal connectivity.
Can we ask questions as you're going through the slides? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Sure.
So in your research, can we go back to the other slide? When it says project readiness, are they assuming some funding is available, or are they assuming construction, as in shovel ready? So I guess, so maybe some of these are not questions or answers you have to questions today, but maybe it's just something to maybe dig into a little bit. If these end up being your criteria that you want to utilize in your new methodology. So further defining what some of these may be, like the project readiness, what that means. And the travel time and congestion reduction is good, but reliability is kind of a question mark for me because I wasn't sure what reliability would be. And livability to me is TOD or TND. That's kind of, speaks to more of a concentrated form of development versus us trying to add additional 2 lanes or 4 lanes in some areas. And the rest of these are good. So equity, so I'm going to assume that's social justice.
Well,
I guess that's a question mark.
and my other question is where do the stakeholders come into this?
I'm sorry, can you?
Where do the stakeholders come into this process criteria?
We will be working with all of our committees and bodies as we develop this. And we can even use this meeting, we can use this discussion right now as a venue to receive input from the TAC on, what they feel might be appropriate criteria for developing a project prioritization process. Our goal is to have this ready to go by next spring, so we'll have subsequent meetings where we'll be continuing this discussion.
I understand that. No, what I'm asking is on that list of prioritization criteria, where does the stakeholders' input go into that list? I.e., if you're doing a project for maintaining this road out here, how does that, as a stakeholder, come into, they don't want that one, they want the one going north-south, goes east-west. That's the question I'm asking because that's going to be key in developing your prioritization criteria is if you have a stakeholder says this needs to be done, whether it's transit or elected or community or wherever. That was the question I had. Not that you're going to get the stakeholders on this one, on the process that you're doing. I'm talking about stakeholders as part of the process.
If I may. So what I've seen with many MPOs is they're going through a process like this. Projects are submitted by the stakeholders that are evaluated through a methodology and then brought back to the stakeholders, which you largely represent the stakeholders in our region. And then every project prioritization list, when it's in draft form, is made available for public comment. And there's a public comment period of 30 days. Then it is adopted by the committees and the board. And that allows multiple avenues for stakeholders to then provide input to this. Again, as Scott was saying, this is just a review of what happened nationally, and it's been boiled down to kind of the more numerical elements, if you will.
But what you're saying, though, there's a stakeholder element, and I'm just not seeing it in your list.
Yeah, and part of this process, larger picture, will be a call for projects that will be a formalized step that will precede then the scoring of projects.
Which is, you mean, so when you actually prioritize the project criteria? What I'm saying is, shouldn't there be a button, like what she was saying, a dot that says stakeholder inputs?
When you refer to stakeholders, you refer to external stakeholders.
I'm saying on that list there, what goes into prioritization criteria? Would stakeholders also be part of that, developing that criteria? Am I just missing the point?
If I could ask, when you refer to stakeholders, which,
Okay, so I'm going to jump in and then tell me if I'm,
I can-
so there is a current list of projects that includes state roads, it includes county road projects, it includes sidewalks, it includes everything. And am I to understand that if there is a new project that is going to be considered to be added onto this list, there's going to be a formal process that includes a ranking to see where it should fall? So then I guess my follow-on question would be, you may have situations where a new project that you want to add becomes a higher priority than those that are already on the list.
That is, I think, where you see the project readiness up there.
Okay.
Obviously, we want to prioritize a project that has been through PD&E and right-of-way. We want to rank that higher than a project that needs PD&E, right-of-way, and construction, because once you start a project, you want to finish it. You don't want to do a bunch of PD&E studies, but then never build anything because you're constantly doing studies. And that's where how you do the prioritization is very critical. But it's very important to demonstrate a track record of completion because,
Well, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and I can say, you know, as a former Illinois DOT employee, if I have a local region that can't build anything but can study the heck out of everything, I'm going to stop giving them money. And so I've got a gentleman sitting behind me. I want him to have complete faith and confidence in this.
So for example, and there, as you get further in your presentation, there's a place that you should probably add the capital plan to, because anytime that we pursue funding, I always guarantee that we've got that 50% match. And I try to guarantee that we have the match, because the DOT funding never funds anything 100%. So there's always a match involved. And it's 50% or more. It could be more. So there's a place to put the capital plan in there, because that assures that you have the commitment and you have the funding. So then you're going forward to maybe advance construction in an earlier year, or you're taking on an activity where we need some help. So I've never recommended that we put something in that that we can't also pay for, and that does not get to construction. So the capital plan, further on in your presentation, we should consider that. So it's not as though you can just cherry pick, well, you know, one that's going to come up on our radar is going to be Tower Road. And we've gotten as far as doing a PD&E study for Tower Road, but in the future, we're going to need to be widening that road. So there'll be opportunities to talk with you further about that one. But so on the capital planning side, we see all these things that are happening, and nothing should be put forward unless you can share in the cost for that project and you can get it to construction.
So what I'm hearing is you would like to see on a list, local match, perhaps, as a factor.
Fundability.
Or fundability
Okay.
would be a consideration here, because we've never turned back money that we have pursued. We don't do that. We don't do that. It's rare. I don't think. The only one I ever know of that turned back any money was the city of Newport Richey. But the county has never turned funding back to the state.
Kurt, to go back to the question you had about the stakeholder input, I hope I'm not answering a question that's not being asked, but I'm confident that everyone probably understands this, but we're not creating a new product for the MPO. All we're doing is creating a process to help give some structure to one of our existing products, which is our list of prioritized projects. And because the LOP is already an existing product, it is included within our public participation plan. And there are public participation elements that are already established within our planning program that will address the level of public participation that will occur within this process. Does that help to answer your question?
Yes and no, but we'll move on.
Okay. Thank you. Some of the potential constraints and issues for consideration as part of the development of the project prioritization process include federal policies and regulations, state policies and regulations, data availability, data collection cost, MPO staff expertise, and MPO staff resource availability and cost. Some of the typical initial steps that we saw throughout the researching different project prioritization processes began always with determining the desired goals and outcomes for the process, determining optimal timing and placement of the prioritization process within an existing planning program. In other words, is it going to be contained within the long-range plan development, or during the TIP development, or during the list of prioritized projects development? It also includes developing a project evaluation framework and workflow, developing a project evaluation methodology and inputs, developing specific project goals and objectives, developing evaluation criteria that support the goals and objectives, and lastly, if using a criteria-based project scoring methodology, determining the weights for those criteria. Some of the potential data sources that we came across for project evaluation include crash data, traffic volume data, travel time data, travel demand model data, existing and future land use data, existing and forecasted population density data, transit system data, pavement condition data, and environmental and historic cultural data. Some of the potential goals for developing a project prioritization process include creating a data-driven, transparent, and easily understandable project evaluation process, prioritizing the allocation of limited resources for maximum benefit, establishing a framework to more effectively select programs and projects that align with stated goals and reach established performance targets. Align project prioritization and development with federal transportation law and performance measures, and aligning project prioritization and development with FDOT policies, plans, and instructions, thereby optimizing access for the MPO to all available transportation funding. And in conclusion, some of the potential benefits of developing a formalized project prioritization process include optimizing spending efficiency with limited budgets, the ability to link spending choices with stated goals and objectives, the provision of better information to decision makers, increased transparency of the decision-making process for stakeholders and the public, which I feel is very important, the alignment of MPO practices with federal and state laws, rules, and procedures, improved access to available state and federal transportation project funding, and a clear understanding by local jurisdictions of the process and methodology by which transportation improvement projects are submitted and evaluated by the MPO. The next steps in this process are the staff will be developing a draft project prioritization methodology. Once we've developed the draft methodology, we're going to test it using the current list of prioritized projects. And after it has been tested, we will be presenting the draft methodology to the CAC, the TAC, and the MPO Policy Board for review, input, and approval, with the goal of developing and adopting a functioning project prioritization process before spring of 2022 for use with developing next year's list of prioritized projects. Are there any other questions?
Are you guys still using that, remember when Michelle Baker was county administrator and Paula Barr, are you guys still using that project?
To bring in capacity projects into this capital plan, yeah. So I am changing it up this year a little bit, but yes.
When I was creating the Office of Economic Growth and trying to figure out how to spend the penny money, we created a draft scoring matrix that you could crosshatch and weight and all this other stuff. And your list was similar to what we were using on how can we potentially fund private partnerships through the RFP process, expecting to get a list of a whole bunch of projects. Of course, we had to go out and really fish for them to get them to come in, but that should still exist somewhere on the shared drive if you want to use it. We didn't end up using it. It was just a little bit, we didn't have enough projects that would come in at once.
What is it called again?
Oh, criminy. That was in 2012.
Project
Project
prioritization?
prioritization matrix. You might be able to do a search that way unless they've scraped the shared drive. It would be in some of my former files.
I believe our draft methodology may very well reflect a very similar process as what you're describing.
So are we going to see the actual recommendation again? I mean, this sounds like you're just in the beginning phase of
That's
establishing
correct.
one.
Right, yes.
And I
Well-
like the way how you're trying to take the politics out of the decision making.
Well, yeah, that's what
Yes.
that's what we did with the CIP back. But it's still subjective because if you're signing values.
But
Yeah.
you have, it becomes a data-driven process, and preferences can still trump data.
Mhm.
Not, and it won't happen all the time, but it will happen. But it'd be interesting to see. Now,
Yeah, I'm interested to see what other people are
so
using
do
too.
you think you're going to, well, you don't know yet, but I was just curious if you would use all that criteria or select from there.
I think some.
Well,
of
he
it's gonna be
listed it as common, so I would imagine there's a lot of other ones that you could
Those are
consider.
the ones
Yes.
that you are leaning towards using then? The ones that you showed your?
I think from his
Would have
research,
fundability,
right?
though.
From his research, that's
Okay.
was what
This is
came
a
up.
starting point.
Yeah.
This is what, these are ideas that, this is what we saw, what other jurisdictions are using. This is just basically the most common elements. And we will be continuing, and the staff will be reaching out to the committees and boards, to receive their input on this. But we can certainly use that as a guide. And if the committees feel that there are other criteria that they would like to add to that, then we can certainly, add or delete from that list.
Now, in any of your evaluation, did it show that some areas are weighted more heavily than others? Because you'll have to assign a weight within each of the criteria.
Every jurisdiction
It's
assign
different.
their own different weights according to
unique.
what is a priority for those communities.
Okay.
We didn't really see any particular categories that were weighted more heavily. But I would say, I believe that project readiness and safety
Safety are the two.
and
I was gonna
yes,
say, I agree. I
are probably
absolutely
the
agree.
two that we saw that had the,
So you may want to
Criminal
think
and
about that,
jagged.
what you think,
Yeah, what does
should be
project ready
weighted
mean?
more
Yeah.
heavily, but
Yeah.
yes, I would agree with those two.
The only thing I would recommend is, don't forget the FDOT stuff, because I noticed you talked about map 21, and don't forget some of the FDOT criteria that you may have to, and you just reference it if nothing else, so, because you probably will get that question. The other thing is, MAP 21 affected both of our jobs extensively. But don't forget the FAST Act tweaked a lot of that. And I don't know how much it tweaked on yours, but for me, it basically said I had to come up with 2 new documents that I didn't have to come up with anymore. So just, don't just, focus on MAP 21, because I know
No,
they did.
MAP 21 was simply referenced as, that was the beginning of the process for the development of performance measures for the MPOs, but we will be referencing the most current federal legislation.
Yeah. It just didn't seem like that with the presentation, just how it came across us. But yeah. And good luck on the politics part.
Yeah, we've been there, done that. We get it. But I do think the stakeholder point that was brought up and the fundability are both real crucial elements from speaking from people who have all budgeted and prioritized projects for many years.
Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about with the qualitative and the quantitative elements of the process, most of the processes that we saw contained elements of both. The quantitative, of course, dealing with the data and helping to make the process data-driven. But there's typically a qualitative element too, where there is some subjective judgment, where values begin to fall into it, and that's perfectly appropriate.
So I would also suggest that when you do that ranking, that you have a team that does this, so that
One person can't skew it.
whatever, and maybe you want to pull from the TAC too. I mean, when you start to do once you've come up with your methodology that you want to use, and then when you start applying the metrics to this, it would be good to have a diverse group of people sitting at the table with you while you're doing this, so that it'll be easier for you to do it that way, I think.
Yes.
To have broader representation with different disciplines, which you have up here.
Yes, agreed.
Just an idea.
Yeah. We definitely will be doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That was good.
Thank
And I
you.
think that's a great idea,
It is.
that you have a methodology and you're putting that out there as part of the law. I think it's a great idea.
If I can make a couple of wrap-up points on this. First, there was a great deal of effort put into this by Scott. So my many thanks to him for undertaking this project. One of the things that came out in the research is that this process of developing a prioritization methodology or a matrix is typically about a 3-year process. We're attempting to condense this into less than 1 year. The wise move here would be to start with something simple and allow it to grow over a 3-year period into something more complex as we see how it behaves with the current list of projects, and we want to add different factors in there that represent our vision and values for the region. So just to kind of set some expectations as we go forward, please.
Interesting. This will be an interesting process. Be curious to hear what the board says about this. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Scott. That was very good. I appreciate that. Okay, so next up is the Federal Highway Administration Transportation Management Area Quadrennial Review Certification.
Thank you. So the federal government comes out and visits the MPO once every 4 years to conduct effectively what is a management audit. And you would ask, well, why do they do this? And it's because Congress said so. As a person who used to be on the federal team that went out and inflicted this pain and punishment upon the MPOs, I have an intimate knowledge of how this works. There are 4 primary elements to it. They look through all the documents of the MPO, the long-range plan, the TIP, public participation, et cetera, and find things that may be incorrect in them. They come out and they actually interview the staff. In this case, during the time of COVID, this was done via WebEx, Zoom, so forth. At one point when this initially started, it was about a week-long process. They've gotten it down to 1 day. Then FHWA produces a formal report, which is in your package, and they will come out to the MPO board and do a closeout presentation. We're going to share that with you today. Two things I wanted to point out is that Pasco County MPO was awarded 3 noteworthy practices. Effectively, what they're saying is that if somebody is struggling in the area of outreach and public participation or the long-range transportation plan, we will be held up as an example of how to do it right. We have 2 corrective actions, which are basically the don't do this again. One of them is that interlocal agreement, which you saw earlier. That is the way we correct that. And by the way, failing to address a corrective action gives FHWA the power to suspend our funding. And that is a pretty big stick I'm not looking to tangle with. I like my money. And then they call this the UPWP for our second corrective action. It is effectively that OIG audit. They're kind of doing an add-on and saying, I know you're responsible to OIG, but you're going to report to us also. So the title of it is a little misleading. It's the OIG audit FHWA turn. So we are going to be certified with conditions. When we meet the 2 corrective actions, then the conditions will be lifted and we are certified as an MPO for 4 years, in which time we will get to repeat this process. And hopefully next time we won't have any corrective actions, but I can tell you as someone, who, again, who formerly conducted these and wrote reports, MPO certification reviews without corrective actions are about as common as alligators in Minnesota. You got to go to the zoo to see them. So if we could go ahead and pop up that PowerPoint, I'll go ahead and walk through those. Thank you. So if we can go to the next slide, please, or wait, you got the clicker. Here it is. So this will be the presentation that FHWA will be giving to the board. I wanted you to be able to see it. So this is a list of all the federal team that came, well, did the site visit. Usually they're on site. This was a virtual site visit. You'll notice at the bottom, 2 noteworthy practices. That's the attaboys. 2 corrective actions. Those are things we are fixing. And then 3 recommendations, which are basically, you didn't quite make it to a corrective action. These are things we see where you could improve. They may turn into corrective actions in our next report if we're not careful. The report was signed at the end of June, which they have a deadline on that 4-year clock to do so. These are the noteworthy practices, the active transportation plan, the MPO award for Bob the Builder, which was nice to receive the award, and then the award of excellence for the long-range transportation plan. So when you get an award like that, it's hard not to get a noteworthy practice. These are the corrective actions I explained to you just a few moments ago. These are the recommendations and the organizational structure with the adequacy of staff and oversight. It's no secret, I think, to any of you that Pasco County has been running short-staffed and has had a fair amount of turnover. I'm hoping that I will have some tenure here to bring some stability to that. Security, they've asked us to do a standalone COOP and exercise. COOP is a continuity of operations plan. I'm sure you all have those. Being housed within the county, there is a county COOP, but it would be wise of us to develop one specific to the MPO if we are this semi-independent thing that we talked about earlier with that staff services agreement.
They did have one.
It may be a bit dated.
You're kidding me.
What's that, Kurt?
It's
It's all different.
It's all departments. The person was out of thing. I think it was on their own personal drive. They're all being redone. If you haven't received it, you will be.
Oh my gosh.
I was
I'm
on-
so sorry.
The coops.
I was on the
Okay.
COOP team back in, gosh.
Is that why they're reaching out again?
My understanding is that the coops that are currently available for everybody everyone in the county is redoing it. And it goes back to turnover like he was talking about.
Yeah.
So the coop they're coming. I know mine's on my hard drive right here.
Well, they should be updated.
Yeah, well, no, they're.
But starting from
totally
Well, after
scratch.
Katrina, we did after Katrina, we redid all of them.
All new format.
All new formatting, all kinds of things.
So sorry,
So
Carl.
it was coming your way whether they or not, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I think it simply makes sense. As you know, COVID has taught us that remote working is very doable. And most of us are working from home one day a week, one day every couple weeks, which is good practice actually for if we would have an event where we've got to hightail it out of here. Then the last one is our public participation plan. And the intention for us is when we launch our long range plan, that is an appropriate time to update our public participation plan, which is a federally required document, as is the long range plan. And when you update your public participation plan and your long range plan, you can look at what developments have been made in terms of the field of technology for engaging the public. So all of these seem very straightforward and things that we will be tackling, even though they're only recommendations. Why tempt fate in our next federal review? And that concludes the PowerPoints that we'll be seeing at our board meeting. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Have any on the?
I'm so sorry.
It is quite all right.
It's just,
A
it's
thankless
Groundhog
job.
Year. It's Groundhog Year, not just Groundhog Day.
Okay, well, thanks, Carl. Let's see, next up is the future studies, MPO's future studies. We have 4 planning studies on here.
So crazy ideas, the MPO does planning. We are looking at particular projects to conduct studies on. These would be of a high level feasibility style nature. When I came aboard, one of the things I recognized was that on US 19, we seem to have congestion, we have crashes, we have fatalities. And as I drove the corridor, I recognized that it has a lot of opportunity, particularly to maybe increase the tax base. So we'd like to look at that corridor. Kurt and I have been talking with T-BARTA about regional rapid transit on this corridor. I've spoken with Florida DOT about my concerns about safety, and they have been very generous and very open on that discussion. I'm very thankful for their partnership. The only really remaining thing to do is to then consider the congestion, which ties into safety, and how we can make that corridor attractive to investment or reinvestment, which, as you look at the 8 federal planning factors, the first one is economic development. Now, they say they're not in a ranked order, but when you say it's you list it as the first one, if it was the first thing that came to mind when you passed legislation, it probably was pretty important. So there's that one. The Adair Road Traffic Impact Study, we've been hearing that has a future need that will come up very quickly.
Where is Adair Road?
Across from the high school.
Which high school?
high
On
school?
52.
Oh, it's over here.
There's
That's
a
the one that you-
over
That's yours.
1,000 unit development that is occurring to the north side of 52 and back a little ways on Adair that will presumably be using that intersection to access 52 and the rest of the world when those over 1,000 residences wish to go to jobs, Publix, whatever else it may be.
Is there a gap? I mean, is there an issue with connection? Is there a?
Camp Bradley will go through, which is a little bit to the east.
Oh, maybe.
There's a
that-
dirt road, Thomas
Maybe.
Jefferson, right next door. It's only 20, majority of it's 25-foot
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
There was a couple sections where there's a 50-foot, but looking at stormwater and anything else, other improvements that you would need to do, there have to be some residential full takes in order to accommodate that. And these are county-owned facilities.
There have been county projects approved up there that I thought had conditions of approval.
Swanee
so-
Lakeside, they did have an approval to pay into a fund for some improvements, which they have done.
Okay.
but that was it. The other ones have indicated no impact as part of the transportation analysis. Yeah. Yep. And Adair actually comes out at Morningside. It turns into Morningside between the school and the fairgrounds.
It doesn't, does it connect into the Morningside that we're working on now?
That would be further
Further?
down
Okay.
on the new construction, yeah. Sorry.
No, quite all right. The third project is a multi-use path study in Zephyr Hills. We've spoken with them about a couple different facilities they have over there that they're interested in adding a multi-use path and having a connected system of multi-use paths. And then the last one that is on this list is the Pasco County Freight Plan. And
Oh,
this
what does
would
that
be,
mean?
pardon me?
What does that mean?
Okay, so we'll be launching a long-range plan. And to modularize the long-range plan, there are certain elements that go in it. To get a jump start on it, freight is an important part of any long-range plan. We'd like to look at the freight needs, movements within the county. So there would be a look across the whole county. Where is freight, going, coming from? Where is it stopping? Which largely here you'll find that freight is stopping at, say, a Publix, a Walmart, a Target. It's not that we have freight distribution centers, but around us we have some. And so we may see freight traffic moving through the community. The other thing is we have a rail line on the east side of the county, and right adjacent to it or nearby it is land that is zoned for industrial. And this seems like a screaming opportunity.
Have you talked to the PEDC at all? Because they're, yeah, that's one of their ready sites. Is
PDC.
yeah, the Pasco Economic Development Council. And they also, with regards to freight, they're working with a lot of ready sites confidentially. So they might actually not be able to tell you exactly where some of these new locations would be, but you can look at their ready site. They have a, on their website, they have a section that's just ready sites and a lot of distribution. Those are definitely high candidates for distribution centers. So you can bank that freight will be going.
We also have two
To them.
freight, we do have two freight distribution centers in Pasco. Both of them are across from each other on Suncoast and 54, right? We have the Amazon. that
There's
just-
one in Bexley.
One in Bexley.
And,
Yes.
yeah, the other one, that's the one.
There's also the Lowe's, which is in Astoria,
Oh, I forgot about that. It's true.
the last mile. You actually have about 7 different pods, and if you look at the previous freight studies that have been done for here, you've got the Dade City Business Center, you've got the intermodal facility that we gave Zephyr, as a county, we gave them money to install water sewer lines around that industrial area, and there's about 5,000 acres along the S line that you could combine to make it happen for an intermodal. We also interviewed the primary folks over there in Lakeland area and figured out where their trucks were going. And to go north, they go up 571.
Okay.
And you are 39 miles from the port. If you'd like to know any of the background, I
Speak
got
to
it
the
for
former
you.
economic development
Do we
director.
We ought to,
Do we have any current freight studies though? Do we have?
The
them?
last one that I was a part of was in 2017, maybe 2018, when they were doing the District 1 and District 7 regional studies updates for pockets.
okay.
I'd be really interested in seeing what was regional, in addition to being within the county. And I say regional too, because a lot of the opportunities for funding through what they're calling now RAISE, it was Tiger, then Build, and now it's RAISE, is for facilities that support the movement of freight.
Mhm.
And that's always been an area that I've been challenged with because I wasn't aware of any studies with any of the capital projects that we have where I can make that argument
Oh, wow.
that it says that it supports freight.
Some of it's in
So-
the economic development plan background data. Some of it's in there unless it's been lost. When we did the economic development plan.
But it'd be good to update that.
Oh, yeah.
or
It would
to
be.
Yeah,
have
it's been a while.
something-
Especially because it's really evolving
because there's
now.
a lot of stuff that's new. I mean,
Mhm.
listening to Cynthia
Sounds like a study
I mean,
is very much needed.
And then with the additional foreign landing of 98 coming up through.
Oh, and
up to
52 expansion,
301.
that's going to be huge. You know, they're looking all along 52.
Oh, well, you got to see how many rounds.
So I think that's a great idea to do that freight study.
Yeah.
I'm going to circle back for a second on US 19 redevelopment study. So that you're aware, there have been studies done for US 19. The Harbors redevelopment plan is a big one. Mary Helen was the project manager for that one. We also have the Smart US 19 infrastructure that's going to be done for ATMS between Pinellas and Pasco. And there have been a lot of DOT projects where they've closed medians, and there has been a lot of studies that DOT has done, and actually construction done to make it safer. It has a long history.
And
Yeah,
in the past, some of the discussions were, you know, if DOT would give up the CIS classification, then you could go to more of that complete streets and urbanize. But until the CIS gets removed, there wasn't at that time much buy-in from DOT to make any of the changes or to partner with the county to make any of the changes.
And looking at that facility, I would see how it would be difficult to remove the CIS designation from it, to be very fair to DOT about that matter.
Well, it's gone from freight to people. So
Yeah, but I imagine some kind of balance between what Pinellas did might be, because you know what, they did a lot of good things in terms of pedestrian safety, but they did kind of at the expense of the economic vitality of some of those key intersections. So I think if we can somehow balance those two and have certain areas that are targeted for certain types of redevelopment, whereas increasing safety. Man, I was just on 19 yesterday, and this bicyclist just came like literally opposite side of traffic at me. It was very scary. And I felt bad for them, because I was like, okay, well, they had nowhere to go really. But, you know, because when you're on your bike, you're going to take the most direct route, right? So,
Frogger. Same with the
oh,
people.
it was so scary.
In the last 3 hours, we just had that same conversation.
Yeah. So, you know, but Pinellas, like I said, you know, I can run. I ran all the way from Indian Shores to Coachman Park safely. I mean, it was a part of a marathon, so it was like 13 miles, but, you know, I ran safely, but, you know, it's just balancing those different needs. And I think it's a huge opportunity.
I see it as a grand opportunity as well.
Well, they made strides when they were able to do some of the landscaping.
Well,
That's a big jump.
exciting stuff going on.
Well, thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
So do we have anything for congestion management task force issues? Do we even have a task force for congestion management anymore? Is there such a thing anymore?
I'm new enough, I don't know the answer to that. I apologize.
We still do, Debbie.
Because
We
they
just
used to
haven't talked
filter
about it.
through, like CAC, they used to flag certain things, and then we didn't anymore.
We still do, Debbie. We just don't, we haven't talked about it. We haven't had anyone from the tech team to come in and actually discuss it. So it's been a little bit of a rocky.
Maybe because of COVID, nobody was actually going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
So there was no congestion.
Okay, all right. Chris, you have
PCPT.
anything update?
Well, just to give Carl some encouragement, 3 years ago or 5 years ago when I started, I literally walked in like he did for an inspection for my
Has it been 5 years?
in December.
Wow.
Yes, time flies when we're enjoying ourselves at Pasco County, doesn't it? So I had my FTA training and review at the time. I walked into the same type of situation Carl's walking into. We had 17 findings, to include grants going back for 8 years. I am happy to announce it's official. We have our FTA trying to review complete with 0 findings.
Yay.
So that is, what did you call it? As rare as alligators in Minnesota. That's what he called it. Yes, it's pretty rare. So I'm kind of proud of that, the achievement the team has done, and we've moved forward on that. The other good news is I've been talking about Ecolane and getting that all up to speed. The final steps should be done by the next meeting, which is a real-time app that you can book trips on your phone, see where the bus is on your phone. And we've now actually incorporated it. And if we do have an evacuation due to some big storm coming through and causing trouble, we can now pick people up using that app to be able to transport even more people quicker and with more accuracy on where they are. So we know we picked up Kurt Scheibel on this day and we dropped him on Fasano at this time and on this
That's
day.
amazing.
And having had the frantic granddaughter call,
Oh my God.
that is huge. And that includes the people that from ALFs, things like that. So we're really looking forward to not using that system, but it is there in place. The other thing is we have a lot of things that we've been doing for the last 5 years that are finally starting to come to fruition. One of those is our COA. It's still in the county attorney's review process, but it is getting moved forward. So we'll be doing a complete operational analysis of all our routes, everything that we do on the fixed route side. So hopefully that's coming out soon, and we will be doing a presentation here and looking for your inputs. Specifically, one of the things I specifically put in there is all the planners for the different cities. So Newport Richey plus both the stakeholders and the planners, Zephyr Hills, San Antonio, St. Leo, Newport Richey, Port Richey, all the above. So there's a lot of funding in there for that outreach. Other things that we're looking at is also the state through Qatar has a complete ITS system program going out for bid. It just closed out. So hopefully we'll have a new ITS system we'll be putting in place for the fixed route side. So they closed that out Tuesday, because Monday was a holiday, last Tuesday. And we're hoping that will be coming out soon, saving me of having to run a huge RFP. I can now buy out the state contract. So we're really looking forward to some of those things. By the way, all those things are funded. I got the money. It's just that getting through the RFP process has taken us some time, and now we'll be able to do it hopefully in a faster way, to include things like run cutting and what is now called infotainment. So you get on a vehicle and you see ads, but it also have the weather, it also have where the bus is, that type of stuff. So now I have another revenue stream with my budget being really tight in the future. It's going to be, that's going to be key, is getting those other funding streams in. If you did not know, Route 41 is officially closed.
Yeah.
We
I
had
think
to.
you kind of hinted at that the last time we were here.
It was, I think it's well before its time is the word I'm using. Once we get our Route 52 done, and if there's 4 lanes, state of Florida, hint, 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 is across on 52, hint, 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 4 lanes down 52, hint, hint, hint. I don't think he's listening to me because he's, but once that happens in the 52, that will be, when we get to 52, when Ridge Road gets complete, that's going to have a bus route
Right.
down it. That's when 41 becomes a key north-south connector.
And you provided a report at I think it was the last hearing, where you had a cost effectiveness per route. And I really like that, because I hope that our planners at the county are looking at that, because it really emphasizes
Planners,
well,
it kind of
in the
piece of
current
the-
planning and long range planning, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of, in terms of, making amendments to the comp plan that are consistent with, that everybody's sort of kind of inter-coordinating across the board.
Yeah.
And I thought that effectiveness that cost per rider is so much more cost effective in dense areas.
Yes. The other thing is that one we're looking at is 31 right now, which is the one that does Dade City. The preliminary data is pretty eye-opening, that we have a very core group of people, but that's all we pick up. And we pick them up in the morning, take them to work, bring them home at night. So we're looking
Like Melanie.
Huh?
She's the NPR Dade City Express.
The 31. No, 30 goes up and down 301. 31 is up here.
So is the 30 the one that picks up people like every hour? There's usually 2 people at the bus stop, and any hour that I pick there's usually
30
at
is the
least
one that
2.
goes between Zephyr Hills and
And
Dade
like-
State.
in Lakuchi, right?
Dade City.
Just Dade City?
30 is, okay.
31 in Dade City. 31 is the one that goes up to
Lakuchi,
Trilby and
okay.
that area up north, comes around down here, circles this building. A few
So
others.
which one of the two at the transfer facility are the ones that, I mean, literally, they pick up 1 or 2 people once an hour? It's interesting to watch it.
Oh, that's the one off of in Zephyr Hills. That's
Okay.
off of, used to be on, it was Gall, it's the
Mm-hmm.
street next to Gall, 7th Street. Now it's kind of around the corner because they moved our
Yeah,
facility.
this one here, though, they literally, if you go there any hour, there's 2 people sitting there.
Yeah, they're
That's
going
it.
up and down, they're
Okay.
going up and down 301. That's the 30. And
Okay.
that's pretty consistent. Now, the one I'm looking at is we pick up very specific ones.
Oh, you
It's
see
to
you see the people in the morning, you see them in the afternoon
Yeah.
getting off and on, and they usually get off at Meridian.
One of the reasons why we changed companies and we moved on from route matches, we had APCs, but they could never get them to work. So we could never get the automatic passenger counters tell us how many people were getting off and where they were getting on and off. They work fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They just couldn't get the software to work on top of it. So we're moving on to somebody new, and that's part of hopefully the state will have something. But we'll move forward on that. But so what we did is we have one of my guys is literally scanning videotape. So he pulls the videotape, he runs it. He's done it now for about 2 months,
Oh,
and we've got some really good data.
so exciting.
Yeah, so excited. Well, see, but you could do it at 12 times speed. He goes click, click,
Yeah.
and he now knows where everybody gets on and off. So
Yeah.
he's pretty good about it. Other than that, excuse me.
Bless you.
Excuse me. We're moving forward. We're getting close to starting our next budget cycle. So we're starting to get all things together for what we're looking on that. Hopefully the COA will help us because the big thing is that it goes back to staffing, like on your thing is we've grown drivers, but we haven't grown back office. And that I think is hindering our ability to grow. And we are still looking at doing some type of no load option down the road. They're building a new parking lot for us. So the big hole is going to get filled in over by us. And they're going to flatten the one spot and they're going to fill it in with a
Really?
hole. And they're going to pave it over and that's going to be our new parking lot.
An
Old dump.
dump.
Yep.
That's an old.
Well, what we
old
want to
dump.
do is I would like to get covers on top of that
Okay.
and put solar panels on the covers.
Hmm.
And so because it's a nice open field, and then I have electric buses that we can go into
saw
a
that.
bank. Now I've done where I charge them up at night and then I pay for them with the electric in the morning and charge them up at night. We can literally get to the point where we have a return of investment. And this is rough numbers, very, very rough, especially if we get a partnership with Duke Energy, which has those big power lines that run right there.
Mhm.
And the substation literally is like less than a quarter mile away, working with them as a private partner, private-public partnership. I know I can spit that out.
Repeat.
The people think,
P.
in our community, we always think of that public participation plan.
Oh.
But that's what we're looking at doing is, so we're not drawing more electricity and putting more pollutants through the electric plant. We're doing it through
Your own renewable resource.
sun.
You're gonna have your own solar farm.
Huh?
The county's gonna have its first solar farm.
I have heard that, but I'm looking at my own solar farm for my
The
buses.
PT solar farm.
You'll have
And-
your own.
Right, but
Well, your
here's
own
the thing.
Public-private.
Like I
solar
said,
farm.
it literally becomes cost negative after 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that 6 years, it's all cross profit. So my charging will become free, and the buses themselves, the biggest cost is that charge. So I can now eliminate the origination fees, bring them down to almost nothing without having to do anything, and I have everything out there. It's just going to be a huge no-low bidding process. And the problem I'm concerned with is no-low has a very specific timeline on them, i.e. the next year, you have to start the projects.
Mhm.
But with Pasco County's history of slow RFPs, there has to be a buy-in at all levels of the procurement process.
Pretty
to get
early
that all
on,
done.
yeah.
So that's going to be the limiting factor. The good news is, if you did not know, is that the current administration went from $34 million for no-low to $138 million. And they went from the $1 million, before it used to be they would fund like 10 projects at full cost. then the Trump administration, they funded everything at $1 million. That's a bus. This one is full cost. So the ones they did out there, they full costed, and it wasn't just like 10, it was like 30 or 40 of them, and he's continued on those. So that's the goal, and that is a good goal to have, because buses save fuel, and then the more you do that, the better off you are. And then I know Carl mentioned briefly about a Route 19 BRT. One of the things I'm putting forward is, well, do we want to do a BRT with diesel or with electric, or do we want to pursue something like a monorail or a something that's quiet, that still gets the things done? And monorails are relatively quiet. If you've ever been to Disneyland and one goes across, it's basically a hum. Well, you think about the hum in the middle of 19, that hum is not going to be even heard by the cars sitting next to them. So I know that there was a study done in 20 something or other, like 2010, 2012, 2014, on a monorail up and down there. It would be something that would work relatively cheaply, and no land use needed to be purchased. And it fits in with the progression, all electric, all there, and everything seems in place. And I know Jensen's going to approve it immediately for funding. So we're good on that.
Are you on 15-minute cycles on 19, or are you still on
No,
half
we're
an
still
hour?
on 30. One of the things that has routinely been asked on every public survey we've done is to increase that or decrease that to 15 minutes. It goes down to, though, that's a significant cost increase that right now the county is not looking to bear. That's why I'm hoping the rec study will come out with this and come up and say, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to go forward with it. And then I'll present all my budget proposals based off of that. Because Pasco County is still growing at, I don't know what the rate is now, but we're still one of the fastest in the nation. And like as an example, a friend of one of the guys that works for me, his mother-in-law put her house up for sale. It didn't even last a day, and it got into a bidding war, and they're still bidding on it right now. It literally was today, and he sort of said they've already got bids and they're going back and forth on them. Sight unseen.
Yeah, I'd heard that was happening a lot because there's not much of an inventory. And people
Don't get me
are
started
putting
on
them
that
on the
again.
market.
Don't get me started
Sight
on that again.
unseen.
Have you ever tried to build a house in Pasco County?
Well, I did build a house in Pasco.
I've built two.
But I mean, just like recently.
Yes.
I tried to do it when I first moved here, and it was cheaper to buy a house that's already been out there. We'll talk
Yeah,
later.
I mean,
We'll talk later on it, because I really wanted to build a house myself, but yeah.
Still come to Dade City, we're quicker.
I was looking for someplace where I didn't have to drive as far. That's about it for I got.
2 years. We'll do
Thank
2
you.
years in September. Thank you.
okay. Other business items of note. Anything else we want to talk about? Future TAC agendas. Oh, Tina, come on down. Tina wants to brief us.
In partnership with Bike Walk and FDOT, we'll be offering a couple of League of American Cyclists cycling courses. The October 2nd course is already filled, and then December 4th is our next one. It's part virtual and part on bike skills, and this is in prerequisite to an instructor's course that we'll be holding in February, also in Pasco County.
Is there an age minimum requirement for the
I
class?
believe there is. I think it's 16. I'll double check that. But Julie Bond's the instructor and I'm the instructor. And then we have several LCIs that both Julie and I have taught that will be helping with all the classes. And again, the main purpose of this course is to teach you how to ride in traffic. It's not riding on trails. So we will do some driving skills and emergency maneuvers and some basic, actually mechanical, different things that we'll go over, like changing a flat. But the main purpose of this is how to act and be treated as a vehicle on the roadway, which is what League American Cyclists is about.
You're going to make me put a flag in the back of my bike.
What?
You're gonna make me put a flag on the back of my bike.
No, it does not.
Okay.
You can if you want
I
to.
was
And
just-
we really encourage recumbents to put flags on their bikes, so.
Tina, did you two teach another class before these two? Did you do another one before this, or is this October 2nd?
This is our first one.
I like the notice that you did.
Yeah,
I like this.
do you have it on social media so I can resave it places?
Yeah, and I can send everybody the copy of this. And this is the only national certification class that is offered for cycling.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, and it's been around for a long time. So, but any questions on that? And then again, lots of fun. And I encourage people, if you don't want to take the whole class, you can do the online part and come out and watch. And it's one of the first events that's going to be held at the Starkey Library.
Oh,
I'm not
wow.
going to butcher the name. The new Cultural Library Arts that's going to be at the Starkey.
It's just
Yeah.
that everything.
I had to correct it to put it on the flyer, by the way. So, but we're going to use that
This is
facility.
Starkey Ranch, not in Starkey Wilderness.
No, it's the school.
Just call it Joel
right next to
Two's
the brand new
Library.
school.
Joel Two's Library,
Um,
Cultural Center.
That's everything. It's a theater too. A theater, a library, and a cultural center.
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Tina. That's nice. That's really good. Anything else we need to talk about? No? Anything for us, Jensen? All good? Okay.
Move to approve.
Oh.
Move to,
Wait a second, I have a comment, though. Now, you said that the next TAC meeting is not going to be on the 11th, it would be the 14th, but that 14th is the MPO board meeting.
Oh.
So you guys need to probably back that up to the previous week, so,
think the
because
four-
I think the 11th is that staff day.
Staff development day.
Staff Development Day, and then the 14th is the MPO board meeting. So you'll have to look at another date for our TAC meeting in October.
I will not be able to attend the meeting on the 11th. I will not be able to attend the meeting on the 11th, just if it's on the 11th.
What about October 4th?
Some reason I have it in my mind that the October 14th date is for the MPO board meeting.
Is the 14th is the MPO board
Yeah,
meeting?
which would push us about 1 month prior to that. I don't have the date before me on,
If you can just give us a heads up.
Yeah, just let us know when it's going to be. You think in September then for us? Well, let us know. Just give
I'll
us
find
enough
out.
notice. Let us know.
Yes.
Give us enough notice. so that we
September
can-
20th would work. September 13th, the board has a board meeting on that Monday, so that wouldn't work.
Oh, yeah, they do. They got board meeting.
So it would be like either the 20th or the 27th or the 4th.
Yeah, October 11th, we have it, and then the 6th is the CAC, the 11th is the TAC, the 14th is the board. So that month, we're supposed to have like a full regular cycle of meetings is how it's supposed to go.
But the 11th, we can't. do
Right,
it.
exactly.
All right.
When is CAC?
The 6th,
Of October?
yes,
Planning Commission's on the 7th.
right. We could see if we could do it the 12th. If we have boardroom.
BCC's on the 12th.
Oh, yeah, that's a no-go.
Friday.
October 8th is Pasco County Conference Championships all day. I can't go on the 8th.
My recommendation is just you guys figure out something that seems to work and let us know. Because we're trying to do it here, we'll miss something.
Yeah. So just let us know. Just give us a good notice, like,
Okay, no problem.
so that we can have a quorum.
Yep.
And
And
it's going to be Newport Richie, though. That won't change? Tania?
No, unless the boardroom, we can't get a boardroom. That's the only caveat.
Okay.
Because the boardroom is usually the issue because BOCC or Planning Commission,
all kinds of people.
yeah, they come
What time
before.
is the CAC meeting again on Wednesday?
Yeah, I will get back with you and let you know some dates and then we can go from there.
Okay, with that, I guess we don't have anything else, so we'll go ahead and adjourn, and
Move
thank
to
you,
adjourn.
Carl and
Thank
Scott
you, and thank you
and
to the
Jensen.
team.
Thank you.
and Tina and Tania.
And Lori.
I don't know Dude's name.
Oh, IT,
IT.
IT.
And Craig.
I was going to say, it's either Craig or Scott.